I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Finance Budget Audit Committee. Roll call.
Pro Tem Piper?
Here.
Councilmember Black?
Here.
Okay.
All right, so the consent calendar.
You just have to make a motion to receive and file, and we're good. Or a motion to approve, rather.
Got the, okay,
I would make a motion to approve the consent. I don't even see a consent calendar,
it was on the front page of this one.
which I don't have.
That's okay, but it came in an envelope. Either way, it's not that exciting. I'll second it.
Here, can you, oh.
Thank you.
All in favor? All right, so then review the proposed fiscal year 24-25 general fund budget.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through this very quickly since we want to leave time for the discussion. We can make this thing happen.
Ready.
All right, Christian, maybe have to help me out here. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're just here to present you the details of the expenditure budget. We've focused a lot on the revenue side and the balancing, but this is getting into the nitty-gritty details of the expenditure budget by department of the general fund. I'm going to just go through quickly some of the key changes, which we've kind of already talked about, and then, obviously answer questions, but then really turn it over to you, the committee, to ask us questions about anything that you see. We just provided to you, so you see in front of you, a report that looks similar to what's in the attachment, but it has fewer columns. But what it does have is some descriptions of what's in each of the accounts, excluding all the labor costs, because that's just, that's staffing, but ignoring the salaries and benefits related items. Everything in there has a description as to what's included in those numbers and how we sort of came up with those proposed amounts. And then at the end of this, we're going to ask for some feedback from all of you, recommendations that we would take to the council for their consideration on the 13th, which is a week from now. And then, as you remember, we talked about last time, and I'll show you again, but we had a slight deficit, and just really asking the question, how do you want to address that? One of the easier solutions would be the using funds from our Section 115 trust to make our payment to PERS. That's one option that would completely resolve that. So this is the same slide you saw a couple weeks ago with when you were sitting at council. This is kind of just to indicate that the budget for next year has gone up by about $144,000 from the sort of the baseline budget of this year. And we talked about the reason for that, and there are 5 items here that address the key changes. Law enforcement going up, additional work on wildlife management and pest control, specifically for coyotes. To mention the payment to PERS that was required every year, $63,000. That's what's work, and may potentially use our Section 115 trust for that. The election expense and additional costs that we are seeing through Wildan. And let me just go back real quick. If you notice a little note at the bottom, if you exclude these items, all the other many line items, they went up and down some, but on a net basis, they increased by less than $1,000. So really, it was staff moving money from certain accounts and realigning. And this kind of goes back to what we started a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. Our goal was to get the budgeted expenditures to be real and to have credibility and to reflect what our real costs are and what they expect to be. And so it's been an evolutionary process, and we're getting really close. And so staff has put a great deal of effort into looking at the each account, what's in there, what do we really need for next year, and that's what speaks to a lot of the changes you see that, again, net to less than $1,000, except for these items here.
Okay, but Wildan, is that all reimbursed through the permit process?
It is. I mean,
It's not real bottom line expense. This is just their fees have gone up, and then the fees we charge cover it?
well, they're 2 different things. They charge us for their services,
Yep.
and we're seeing more movement toward Wildan expedited services. We are seeing more revenues, generally speaking, coming from Wildan. But overall, our revenues that we've seen on a net basis, including LA County, are going down. So it's kind of a little bit of up from Wildan, but mostly down from the LA County side.
But you mean total revenues going down because of building and stuff is down?
Yes.
But Wildan Because I understood like Jeff, we're reimbursed for all
Sure.
the Wildan stuff. So that it's going down because building in general is going down, but the exact Wildan expense is not increasing, correct?
So on,
Because we get reimbursed dollar for dollar
Well,
for what Wildan does,
yes,
correct?
so we track the costs separately from the revenue. So they will, whatever we incur in costs, you know that we're going to see even more than that in revenue, right? So we're going to be fully
But
reimbursed
so in
plus.
theory,
Correct.
this 15 grand shows up someplace else as a 15 grand
Yes,
increase.
yes, but you're not going to see a net increase
You're both
because,
right. It's
because the LA County portion is, we're seeing revenues going down on that side. So it's more than offsetting the increase in revenue from Wildan.
And Wildan, part of it is an awful lot of county is still, believe it or not, remote. And so it's so slow that people can't stand it. So Wildan will be getting more business in the future and the county will be getting less.
Yeah.
Well, and also, if you see what the planning commission is going through, there's a handful of monster houses that are about to
Right.
happen, that are gonna be giant dollars, and they're gonna tear down old buildings that are, 400 grand worth of
Right.
Prop 13 money.
Right, but we won't have all, we'll get some of that this year, but
No,
not
but it'll
all.
be
Right.
probably this budget
In
after
in the
budget.
future, it'll be a big
Yeah.
jump.
Okay, I'm good,
Yeah,
No, no, it's, you're
to
right.
me, I'm seen as a net zero, and it shows up, okay,
Right.
it is, if we're just Wildan.
okay.
Building revenues for, because of LA County are going
Right,
down.
we understand.
And there is a premium for the Wildan services, so,
They do have to pay more.
so that's good.
That's up to them. They do what they want.
So this is all to say, you've seen this before, far right, that, we look at our updated revenue projections and updated expenditures. We are left with a small deficit of about $46,000 that we're going to need eventually to address. It may go away organically or naturally in the next couple of months as revenues, start to, more revenue information comes through. But just for now, we are projecting that small amount of deficit. And what I would suggest is when we come back in June, we can relook at this, because we'll have more data coming in from particularly property taxes. We're due a payment this month. We'll get it on the 20th, and that'll speak to whether we are going to see either revenues better than we thought or same or a little bit less. So that's it. And again, you have in your packet each account, and then with additional attachment or handout, the descriptions of what each account, and we're just here to answer questions.
Are we fully staffed right now?
Yes,
Fully staffed.
until July when Abby leaves, but
What does that do?
she's our part-time administrative clerk bookkeeper.
And then we're gonna hire, replace that?
Yep,
Okay, and then on our, because on here, there's 7 grand worth of temporary salaries. What does that cover?
so when I bring someone in to help out during the interim for filling in, for example, we had, Robert Halfstaff here before I filled the administrative assistant position.
Just because we have more people here in my mind than we ever had. It just,
Yeah.
so part of it is prior, we always had empty spots, so there's a perception and there's a reality of what that looked like. So
My goal is to not have staff have a revolving
I
door.
have staff.
Or not have staff have a revolving door.
400 grand, I'm like, but the.
No revolving door, I should say.
But with this many people in this building, is there any reason we need to be hiring people to do extra stuff?
I think that $7,000 is
Oh,
not a lot.
I understand,
and
but,
I think that
But
it's-
we're off by $45,000 and it hurts my brain. I want to find $45,000 and we're gonna have
Well-
other problems when we talk to next door.
So we're off by 45, and we're probably not really gonna be.
I just,
And then, unfunded liabilities, pay it, don't pay it, we've got all that money, that's, it kinda counts, kinda doesn't. But that's 62,000.
yeah, but the 60.
Part or all or whatever.
Okay, but the 62,000, so if the 62,000 all sits in an account that we already have sitting there.
Right,
It's up to you how we pay for it.
No, there's 62,000 sitting, the money that is in the unfunded liability bucket is all sitting there.
So
Or are we short now because they
historically,
changed the
so
rules?
until this current year, when we came up with a plan to use Section 115 money, Prior to that, we were making a payment out of our own checkbook, so it was shown as an expenditure. It wasn't coming out of that pot of money that's with a separate administrator, called this trust. We can choose to pay it out of that trust, so it doesn't come out of our regular checking account, and then you wouldn't be reflected as an expenditure.
That's what we put it there for.
No, I'm good with that part. Does the amount of money in, that we're unfunded over here match the amount of money we have in the trust?
Yes, it more than matches that. So if we were to combine the monies held by PERS and the monies we have in our own trust
Yep.
that we manage ourselves, the
Like a
total that exceeds our overall liability with PERS.
And that includes the change that's happening or it just happened? So if we take the money, the 62 out, we're not gonna be short. If someone says,
No,
so we got plenty, so,
That's what we did it.
yeah, I'm good with that. I just,
So that's a line here, but it's like not a real line. So there goes your 45, because there's
Yeah.
62 right there.
Okay.
So we can take it from that pot that we put it there
which is
for.
where we should take it from.
and that's what it's, why it was created,
That's
right?
where.
Okay. So from my standpoint, we take it from there,
Mhm.
right?
And then you don't have a 45 deficit anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
As long as the total is more than we owe,
It is.
then I'm okay with it. I just have a problem when the total is less than we owe.
So that's why we put all that money in.
Yeah, I get it.
One of the things that Robert mentioned at the last council meeting is that if we wanted to, we can use that money to pay more, even though it's not recommended, to continue to pay more than what we owe CalPERS. We don't want to do
I don't
that.
want-
Well, the only problem is when they start using real numbers instead of political numbers, that they'll require more. And as you know, the CalPERS things, they give you two sets of numbers, and it's obscene that they do that. I mean, how could, we'd go to jail because two sets of books. But the reality is, they probably had a pretty good year last year as far as their investments. So it might not be that much worse this year. They didn't do as well as the S&P 500, which I wish they would, but I don't think it's gonna be a big increase this year, don't you
Well, and
think?
there's been a handful of cities, and this is what's gonna happen, there's been a handful of cities that have gone bankrupt, and then they cut everyone's pensions in those cities. So they're going to change how all this works at some point in time. I don't wanna be on the wrong side of that we paid in money, then they change it and say, this is
Yeah.
now how it works.
So I don't think we should prepay.
I don't think we ever give them more money than we have to.
Yeah, so I think we should
Yeah.
do
That's
what
a
we
long
do
one.
and not prepay.
Yeah.
I agree. Keep it ourselves.
Yeah, I would never recommend
No.
sending it to PERS.
But we have no idea what it's gonna be increased this year.
So there's two parts to it. You know,
Right.
the payment, the annual payment we make is a diminishing number based on all the sins that have occurred through the current date, you know, right? And so we have this debt that gets calculated, and every year is a new layer on there,
Right.
gain or loss. So what we owe today is $62,000 a year. If they have a huge loss next year, then it just adds another layer that we're gonna have to eventually amortize. But based on today's numbers, we are fully funded when you combine all of our assets relative to our liability, pension liability.
But I haven't seen the numbers from the state yet this year.
Yeah, so we're not expecting a big increase, because like you said, they
probably
had
did
pretty good
pretty well.
results, so they
Last
should be
year was
pretty
good.
stable, yeah.
It was a pretty good year in the stock market.
In terms of the normal contribution rates, separate from this unfunded liability payment.
And by the way, thank you for doing it line by line.
Yeah.
You had said that you had, but I hadn't seen it, so thank you.
Yeah, I was able to work with Robert to get this, so moving
Right.
forward, Robert, we can include this part of our packets.
Is the 7,500, I'm sorry, my brain does not work linear, so you have to deal with me. The $7,500 for city council expense, how much of that do we actually spend and who's spending it? Is it all B? Is Patson and stuff?
Yeah,
Why
so,
why not?
we, I think we increased, or we are recommending to increase from what it was lowered to last year because it was all spent. You went over. That is primarily Councilmember Derringer,
don't wanna
because
increase it.
she attends most of the conferences.
Increase it? No, we're not gonna increase it.
Okay.
And
So
she
what
can-
was it before?
We
I
said,
thought we got $2,500 a person.
well,
and
then she needed more.
I think,
It was $10,000 prior to this,
Right.
So it's two
this year, and then it went down,
went to 5,
went to 5.
this current year. 10 last year, 5 this current year.
And Councilmember Wilson has used some of it as well for, I think, two
He went to
different.
SCAG.
He's went to SCAG last week, and I believe he went to Sacramento for something, at some point during the year. So,
Could we add to, because Pat just went to SCAG.
That just went to SCAG.
So I think the question we should be asking is, was there any value whatsoever for going to SCAG? Because the answer is gonna be no.
Zero for our city and our
Yeah, for what we
residents,
do?
Zero.
So can we add to an agenda somewhere that we discussed that anyone, could we put on an agenda that I'd like to talk about, and run it past Leah, because she's the boss right now, is I would wanna have it so we, if anyone goes to something that costs more than X dollars, we can talk about what that is, that they have to come back and report what the heck they learned that was worth the money that we spent.
But why don't we just put a limit on it, like before?
Well, we had a limit of $2,000, and then we went over it.
Well, we need to not go over. If people wanna go and be a big shot, that's on their own nickel.
Because, well, here's the problem. I've never been to anything that costs money, and if it does, I just pay for it, right?
Correct, but I went years ago, did something in Palm Springs, and you're right, I
Yeah.
paid for it because I didn't want to stay there.
Yeah.
And it was all how to suck money out of your residents and
Yeah.
call it a fee, not a tax. And that's what the whole thing was, is how to stick it to your residents. I had zero interest in that. So, and call it fees, not taxes.
Okay,
Because you're
so,
not allowed to do that,
yeah,
not
no,
allowed to tax them.
so let's do it this way. It was 5,000 before? Let's make it 5,000 again, and if we have to go over, then we have to vote on it going over, right?
yeah, we would just bring back
Because no
a-
one can spend more than $2,000 without coming to here, right?
Well, yes, but I think
5,000 would
for,
be technically 1,000 per each member.
yeah, and I think I think B may have been the one that exceeded it.
We know.
And the only thing I would say about, normally speaking, we don't control things at a line item level. So if you wanted to add the sort of this proviso that we have it 5,000, and that if it's going to exceed that, it's going to require your approval, that would be a special kind of direction and action item.
Okay, so by the definition of how you do this is, no one really has a $1,000 budget. There is a $5,000 budget, and no one's gonna say a word until we go over the 5. Right? So B can keep turning in
Receipts.
receipts, and we're gonna keep reimbursing her, and no one's gonna talk about it.
We just, when I'm in talking with Christian, we try to go through it, and what we can do is to say, okay, this is where we are, this is where we started, and this is where we are now, and just start tracking to say, this is how much money you have left
And
in your
before you pay
balance.
those, and before you reimburse, we can, you can make it a requirement with council approval, if three of you agree to that, that it come back for your approval before we reimburse those invoices.
But you are correct, by the time we find out, it was already expensed.
Yep.
She had already paid for
Limit
it.
on how much I thought we had limit on individuals. Well, I thought we, not just, she gets to spend everybody's.
Okay, I'm gonna go a completely different way,
Okay.
that's not normal for mine. We all do this for free.
Right.
And this is super important for her to go to these things for her.
I don't care.
I get it, but do we just leave it at 5 and then we just leave it at 5? And however it happens? Because I don't know if Leah goes to stuff. Does Leah go to stuff?
Leah is going to go to one of them, and it's paid through the JPIA. The JPIA covers it. Unless you don't show up, then they bill us.
Let me ask a question differently. Different one is, when Leah has lunch today with the mayors,
She pays.
and no one turns that in, right? Because everyone divides that thing 5 ways.
From my understanding, she has been paying unless you've been receiving.
We have not been taking any money out of petty cash or
Yeah.
anything for any of the mayor's lunches when any of you were
I
mayors.
just pay it.
She pays.
No, I don't ever wanna do the water things, cause then you gotta fill out more tax stuff, so I
100%.
don't want that either. $100.
Okay, I think we just move back to 5 and let's move on.
Fine.
Let's,
Do you want to have me just remind individuals who are expensing this, from this account to
no,
say?
you're just gonna have to, you might want to say is, hey,
Yes.
just so you know,
Yes,
it's been,
yes,
it's still
'cause I
at the
don't want it to
same
go
low
above
number.
5. I don't want it to go above 5. I don't want them just to have social stuff.
Okay.
Where's the code enforcement guy on here?
It's gonna be under planning.
Under planning? So, are we happy with how that thing's working? Because,
He's going out there, he's doing his job. The hours are cut compared to what we had before. And we had a code enforcement officer over here, basically 2 days, the whole day. And now he's down to really 2 days, but 6 hours a day.
It's taking him a little longer to close cases.
okay, but I'm sorry, what number is this? Where am I there?
886.
886?
Page top of 3?
So right now, we're paying $62,000 for 12 hours a week?
Right.
But are we solving the problems? Are we getting, I know it takes longer.
It's taking longer and we're slowly closing cases.
Are new ones opening?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to do it. The thing is, the hope that they are driving around and actively doing like the dead trees and stuff like that, that's not happening at all, right?
No, he is, he's going around, he's going, driving around. It's just harder to find them, though, especially this time of year. I mean,
There's a giant, between Jim's house and here on Portuguese Bend, which we all drive on, there's 2 or 3 giant dead pine trees.
well, the one that Mr. Visco had mentioned, we're on that, so
I understand, but he's not spending much time on this. So the downside of this is all of the code enforcement we're doing is mostly really code enforcement, as in building problems and this thing and that thing. I mean, we still got the problem on 77, that thing's a wreck. I mean, there's still things that are happening, but so is the 12 hours sufficient to handle what is not proactive? I don't know how to say what I'm saying here.
No. And John can attest to that. I know this is the contract that he oversees, but from being here, 5 months, I've discovered that he is extremely slow. When he comes in here, it just delays it even longer. He sends emails. I don't know how we can continue to be proactive and close and open cases with him only being here a short period of time. I think he needs to maybe increase his hours in order for us to execute more of these code enforcement cases. On the other side, there are times where he goes to a resident's house and they're not there, and he can only go beyond a certain point because it's private property. So he has to turn around and now the constant circling back with that resident to check in with him. It's taking weeks because he doesn't do it during the.
And is Stephanie doing any code enforcement? No.
She's doing planning.
It's all planning. Okay.
I mean,
I
some
think
of these
that's
cases, they are complaint-based. Like, last week, he went out and he went to visit a neighbor. Neighbor was complaining about neighbor next door. I guess the house is dilapidated. He went over there and visited. It took some time because he was meeting with the neighbor. They had to walk the property. Tomorrow, I have him going out to another property, which is also complaint-based, and he's gonna take a look at what's going on there.
So I'm not saying he's not working hard for the 12 hours. That's, I wasn't, if
Yeah,
that came out that way,
Yeah,
that's not what
no.
I'm saying. What I'm trying to figure out is there enough work? Because I'm getting back to head count and how much is going on around here, is we have 660 houses. Is there enough people complaining about their neighbors that it's filling that much time? Plus, when people get caught building illegally or whatever these things are, because if we want to do more, like more on the tree stuff, we're gonna have to put more money in that bucket.
I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know personally, I mean, I'm not around, I don't know if he is or isn't working hard. You tell us if he is or isn't working hard, if he's taking a lot of time. I don't hear a lot of complaints from residents about code enforcement not happening. I mean, there's certain things that are pretty obvious, like dead trees and this and that, but I mean, it's not one of the things I hear people complaining to me about. Visco, but of course, that's just Visco.
Yeah,
but I
Visco.
don't hear anyone else.
I get more complaints is about, I get complaints about inconsistency. The belief that I'm getting persecuted versus this person over here, which this city is not the city, the HOA, et cetera, us has a reputation forever. I'm on this thing because I didn't like how I felt treated when we were trying to build a house. And not a soul was here. You're on here because you try to do your own path, right? So I think that's where the complaint is how come I'm getting picked on for this when so-and-so does that? The HOA, we point the finger at the HOA because the HOA does it all the time. But I've heard about us sometimes now too. So
Well,
I guess, but that's a different thing. That is, I don't know who that is doing that. I don't know if it's this, because he's not out there actively looking for trouble. So if he's not actively looking for it, sorry, my next dinner is trying to figure out what time.
So NOAA has been, code enforcement for relief, has been going to a lot more of these complaint-driven cases. He is proactive by identifying dry brush or whatnot, areas where he will contact the resident to say it's time to do some field mod. Could he be more proactive? Yeah, I think so, but I think he does spend a lot of those calls is responding to a complaint-based claim or project, right? And that, I'm telling you, it takes a long time. He goes out and makes contact. He sends an email, makes a phone call. He goes to the resident, goes to the other location which the complainant is complaining about. Now, it's just a lot of time spent out in the field. By the time he gets back, he's been out there for like an hour, maybe two. He comes back and now he's doing the administrative stuff and he's got to go back out again. John, I have given him directives to really monitor that, to stay on top of that, follow up, what's open, what's closed, what can we do to expedite this? Where is it at? How can we expedite it at the attorney's office if it's being reviewed? But it's still 12 hours. It's very limited amount of time that he's here.
And I don't necessarily think
Yeah.
that, in my mind, I'm asking it to be, that his 12 hours should be done in 3 hours and then he should be doing something else. I think the question is, and what I think.
But I'm
you
not interested.
Yeah, at this
You wanna
moment.
increase it above 12 hours? I'm
No,
not
no, I don't think we go anywhere.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is, from what you just said, is I don't hear complaints that we're not getting things done. That, people want to talk about the house, and I always, 77, I said, hey, it's legal, and you know how this is going to take. And everyone goes like this, oh, okay.
Is that Portuguese Bend or is that
Eastfield,
Eastfield?
number 77, that the one that's falling apart, and there's another guy who was complaining about something, but you guys wrote it up. I mean, it's just, so, all right, I think we just leave it how it is, and then it's really more of a case of, if we ever get money, we can discuss whether we want to be more proactive and get more results on the trees and whatever, but I don't,
It's just slow,
yeah.
so.
It is. But he does at least have our dead vegetation ordinance, which seems to help.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you guys look at this, after you guys put this together, where can we hack money out of here?
We've
I think that's, as I've said to you in
Pretty
meetings,
good.
Asking?
I've been chipping away all year in anticipation of the budget, and then, we've had conversations internally as we prepare to see where can we possibly cut any more, but,
No, it feels, from my standpoint, it feels like we're making good progress. And so I'm not, by no means whether I was complaining, it's just more if you see something there, and where I'm concerned too is I want to be careful we don't go too far.
Yeah, right.
I will say, I try to leave buffers because prices do change during the year. We had that happen with our pest control for the building, it went up $15, which I wasn't anticipating when I first started the budget. And so then I have to go back and, change my numbers to, be true to what it's gonna be next year.
Well, and I think for me is, if we're spending money on the people who live here, like, I look at the $19,000 we spend on stamps to send the blue newsletters. But people read them.
Yep.
We communicate with people and they know what's going on. To me,
That's.
there's more efficient ways to do it, which it won't be as effective.
That's a good example that you bring it up because, my background coming from
Yeah.
similar as yours was, I know there's a cheaper way to do this from a mail service perspective, but it created so many more hoops for us to jump through, and it created a prolonged period of time to actually get it into production and to the houses, whereas right now we have a situation where we can produce it, they pick it up, and it's at your door the next day, and you know, so I could save like 30 cents on, you know, a per piece postage wise, but it ended up costing me more in time and energy.
I think the results in that scenario is more important than the money. And I think that, but at the same time, when we're doing this, because I know you were looking at the web, hey, if I do this and more, whatever, I also want to make sure when we're figuring out how to do things smarter, that we also make it survivable.
Yeah.
Without, you know, so Sam's the only person in the whole building knows how to blah, blah, blah. I gotta make sure whatever we're doing has a path forward that always works, because I know you could make the website cheaper, not the question. I don't think it's survivable cheaper if you decide not to come to work one day, right?
No, I think, you know, from my perspective, everything that I try to do, at least within my department, is to make sure that there is redundancy at the staff level so that anybody could do it. And so to your point about the website, I wouldn't make that move if I didn't think it was something that would be easy to manage going forward. So we'll explore it. We've lowered our costs, you know, for website hosting. We'll explore that over the course of this year to see, is it possible, and, you know, can we, you know, dramatically lower those costs and still have it be a situation where everybody could work on it. I think it can, but I'm not gonna, you know, we'll come to that, we'll cross that bridge when I have more data for it.
And then like we pay like $1,000 a month for fiber here, right?
We pay I think it's closer to 1,100.
When does that come back up?
What do you mean?
Like, what you,
Well, because I spend a lot of time yelling at my kids about don't just pay stuff, you gotta look at it. And then we've been paying the Verizon bill on auto pay for 20 years. I accidentally logged in as Diana instead of me, and I realized how much money we spend for TV, whatever, that no one uses. So I read the website, and I'm getting 1 gig up and down for $80 now.
Yeah, so we have, you know, what is a direct connect to, and all the South Bay cities now have that. Whether it does get reevaluated as more people join into the South Bay fiber network, it has the potential to lower costs across the scope of each individual user, and which is mostly right now municipalities or government agencies. So there is that potential. You know, one thing we did as next door was, you know, trying to discuss expanding their Cox connection. You know, I reminded them they have access to this pipe, you know, which would give them far greater speeds than what they have with Cox. But they chose not to do that, you know, and they had their own reasons. So could we expand this pipe out as well to residents with some Wi-Fi? Maybe, but they would have to be fairly nearby.
No, it's just more that there's a scenario where I totally understand the stealing of Measure W money, or not W, R money, M. It was M money for,
Measure M is transit.
yeah, so that's where they took all that money, put in Wi-Fi for the cities. I mean, put in the fiber ring. It's just, now it's, at the time, $1,000 was not outrageous for what they were doing. And now it's crazy for what they're doing, since fiber runs right there.
and to answer your question about looking at contracts, they're not all evergreen, where you just let them run and we just keep doing that. And in talking with staff, everything that Christian is saying is exactly true. We do review this, we look at it before a decision is made, and if he identifies it, or even Serena's identifying some savings, we talk about it to make sure that we're not cutting ourselves too deep, but also in reviewing our contracts, making sure that we're looking at them, make sure that we're utilizing them to its capacity, that we are. And if we're not, then we need to look at those contracts and renew them, as opposed to just letting them just kind of continue on, so.
All right, so from my standpoint, one, this is the most organized one we've ever had. The line items make way more sense when I look through it. It didn't feel like guesswork because always before it was like, I don't even need to idea what this is. So from that, this is way better. And you guys are doing a way better job on keeping it reasonable, even though costs all around us are going up. Like, I felt like before when we were doing this, the first time I did it with Jim, I was like, oh my God, and I just started circling things. Like, none of this made sense. This now, it's just me not understanding what's in that bucket, which is a huge improvement from where we were. And mostly,
I think we've tried over the past 2
Yeah.
years to change also the descriptions for these. We've moved things around, moved monies where they should be, not, just in a
It's
catch-all.
super helpful.
So,
And I think the fact that we are all collectively doing a much better job about coding things to the right place, so that what belongs in supplies is going in supplies. So before, 2 years ago, it was hard for us to know what was in there, because sometimes there were things that shouldn't be in that account. But now that that's been cleaned up, and but much better understanding of all that, and much better ability to analyze and evaluate those things, I think we are able to do a better job overall.
You got anything else?
Pretty happy with it.
I know, that's not normal for us.
I mean, what have you heard me say? The budget's pretty good.
And we'll continue to do this practice moving forward, so we'll,
And the hardest part is, for
Now,
me,
you can-
is,
Go ahead.
go ahead, I was gonna say, the hardest part is when we start making more money, is to keep doing this.
yeah, understood.
Because it's, where we get out of control is when we start making money, we start spending money, and then it's hard, then we gotta crush our way back down. If we start keeping it careful, it's gonna give us more air the other direction. Sorry, Jim.
No, I'm just saying, next year I'd like to see how we could cut our stormwater.
Costs?
We're wasting 100,000 every year now. So, I'd like to waste a lot less, or clean some water, or some air, either of those two
Yeah.
would work for me, right?
I'm with you.
Okay.
What is our total? Because right now, we have the money allocated for the sirens. We have the money allocated for court, something to do with tennis for 300 grand.
we have
Who
about
knows where it is
300
right now.
grand.
But we have
set
300 over
aside.
there. We do not have the money set aside for the generator, correct?
No, we have the $250,000 that
Oh,
you
so
set
how do we
aside,
spend all that?
minus the
The
28,000 that
we
we
paid
will,
those
we will
guys.
pay them.
It was on you, dude. Let's just call it like it is. I wanted the nat gas from the very first day, so let's stick it right where it belongs.
Do you take Venmo? You want me to? Venmo comes out of Mrs. Piper's account, so I can send it to you right now.
Okay.
So what is out there that's, besides this building?
Well, we're gonna have to decide about septic or sewer,
Okay,
and we're gonna have to decide what we're gonna do as far as more grant for wildfire stuff.
fuel mod?
because That's never not free. The amount of money and staff time we spend on all these grants is shocking,
yeah.
and it doesn't somehow get counted. It should. So are we gonna keep pursuing all these grants? Or are we gonna say, you know what, a lot of them aren't worth what we have to pay in consultants and what we have to do in
Yeah,
staff time?
my feeling is the telephone pole ones, we used a thing that was about to go away.
Right.
That's great, gone, and we'll never have to do telephone pole ever again, because we won't have any money. And the 28 money's gone forever, and it's all gone.
But now it sounds like we have to pay for the hookup to the individual people's homes, the city does?
That was buried in
That was
there.
part of it.
No, so remember, in those two projects, part of the project is 20A, where Edison covers costs, fully. And then there's the portion, whether on Crest Road, it's called 20C, and on Eastfield, it's called 20B, and we cover that portion, but, right, the city controls and manages that aspect of the project, and we will incur the costs, but we're using grant money, and these grants are 75-25 split, and we are attributing our 20A credits
Towards the,
as our 25%. I mean, ideally,
So we won't have-
ideally, we should not, come out of pocket based on the fact that the 28 credits will be making
It's
up
close to zero.
the monetary, yes, correct.
So to me, that's great,
Okay.
all right? And the sewer, we'll talk about whether we do that or not, and you know where I stand on that. I think
Right.
we have to
It's
keep
okay.
going.
It's okay.
And then I think the biggest wild card right now is across the street, what's going on over there.
Tennis court, you mean?
Tennis court, because we now have to have a meeting with the HOA about it, so I'm not concerned about what
And
that's
then
gonna
what
happen.
about we were talking about doing permeable and stuff for the driveways and parking lots.
As
and
we get
stuff.
measured W money is,
We should be able to, when and if we get to a repaving of the parking lot, And we will need to look at creating additional parking spaces and stuff as a part of that and the lighting, but we should be able to, we could, and it really depends on how else your Measure W money is being utilized, but we should be able to use Measure W monies, and we should be able to possibly use Measure M monies if we can create a, like, pedestrian component to the parking lot where, like, people, you know, like staff in both buildings sometimes walk the circuit around, and if we can create that, there is the possibility of using some Measure M monies. And so right now I have a capital project in Measure M, you know, that as a project that we may possibly use at some point in the future. So we're accruing our monies, you know, with that in mind, if you will.
Love that. How much money, this is my last question, and I'm done. How much money is left in the bucket that is not attached to anything?
In your
In our
your
reserves.
reserves, Robert?
Oh, there's a lot. Okay.
Sorry, I think we went over that last time, so I don't have
I
it.
can't remember, is it 5 or 7 or
It
something?
was somewhere in, you know, above our policy, emergency reserve, we had somewhere, I think it was in the $800,000 range, maybe $900,000.
So it's basically, so let's make it $1 million, make it simple, and our budgets, because we have, the reserves is always gonna be the budget. So we have $3.5 million in there.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right,
Which isn't bad.
Well, that way, in case we ever want something that we really want, we can do it.
no, we are. I mean, we're doing more right now than we ever had.
Yeah, but if something ever comes up we really want to do, we
Yeah,
can do it.
no, I know.
Like,
Uh,
if, you know,
Like, okay, we're good? Do we have to open it to public hearing?
You can ask for public comment, but there is no one.
I'd like to
No
open this to
public.
public comment. Seeing none, I close the public comment. Would you like to make a motion?
do we receive and file? or-
You would receive and file, and I guess just tell us to take any of your comments,
Yeah.
and we'll incorporate into Robert's
Council at
report
large,
for next
as a
week.
whole.
For your, you know, the two things, really two directions. One, reducing the city council expense from $7,500 back to $5,000, and then using Section 115 trust monies to make our annual payment to PERS for the UAL.
Right, yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
That was easy, for us, because you guys did it all, so thank you.
You guys shred these?
Sure.
Or is it just trash? Because it's
It's-
public.
It's trash, but we'll be happy to shred it for you if you'd like. Okay,
Here's my exciting envelope. Thank you.
thank you both very much. We are.